Hello, welcome back to Laser Cut and Fly RC Models. I'm the Laser Model Guy. What I want to do today is I want to create all the parts for the classic KeilKraft Gypsy. What I'm going to do is send the plan across, or get the plan free off the internet. I'll show you how I do that. Then send it across to LightBurn. When it's in LightBurn, I'm going to shape all the components and show you how to lay those all out on your sheet. And then I'm going to fire them across to the laser and cut out a full kit so that we can make the Gypsy. Let's get on with that then. So we go to AutoZone and we go to the search, or we open AutoZone on the internet, go to the search, and all I'm going to put in is Gypsy, because we're looking for the KeilKraft Gypsy. Do the search and there it is. So we click on Gypsy and then we scroll right to the bottom, and there's some nice pictures of the aeroplane once it's been built. We come to the plan file and we download the plan, and it's now in our downloads. So simple as that to get the plan. Then all we need to do from there is go into our downloads, grab hold of the plan and drag it straight into the folder that we've already created for Gypsy, or you could drag it to your desktop anywhere you want, but I've made a folder for it there. So drag it into there, and from there we can then import it into LightBurn, and I'll show you how to do that right now. So we open LightBurn and we go to File, Import, we find the file that we've got KeilKraft Gypsy in, and we open that and we import the whole plan. You can see that is considerably bigger than our workspace, which is the workspace for our laser. So first things first, I'm going to trace the image. I'm happy with the settings that we've got, they always work well for plans, and so I've now got the trace, and I can now delete the original plan, and we'll be working from the trace now to make all our components and create the Gypsy. I think the first thing is for us to start identifying the components, and if we have a look at the side of the fuselage here, we've got some components around the cabin windows. We've got our formers that are going on top of the nose that you can see here in the plan view, and then here in the side view, and they'll be forming the shape, the curved section at the top of the nose coming down to the to where the motor will be mounted. Then as we come further down, we've got the this F4 shape. Now that would normally be if it was rubber powered, but we're going to be converting this to electric radio control, so we don't need to do that. But when we arrive at the tail, we've got the vertical stabilizer here, which I'm going to call the fin. So we've got the fin here, and we've also got the skid at the bottom here. But I think what we'll do is we'll make this out of a solid piece of 1/8 balsa. If I just take a line, and then all I'm going to do is I'm going to put several points going round the curve, and I think if we just drag this to one side, what we'll be able to do is if we go to nodes and then go over each of these nodes here and make them into smooth curve nodes, so you hover over the node, click on the node and press S, and then the same again with this one, this one, this one, and if we press all of these, make all of these on the underside into smooth curve nodes, what we'll find is that they all blend together nicely and we end up with a nice curve, a nice shape there. We can save that now as the skid at the back of the aeroplane, but what I want to do first is just join these ends, because we've not quite joined those, and if we leave them as they are, what we'll find is the laser will stop cutting. So all I'm going to do is go to nodes, and all I'm going to do is bring that node to that one and join them together like that. Okay, when we come off nodes, we'll find that that's quite a nice shape, and if we bring it over, you'll see it actually matches the one that we've got in the aircraft, and that will do. So I'll bring that straight over to our sheet where we'll be cutting. I'm going to name it just a height of 4mm, come in there and we'll just call that F1. And then if we come off there, we will assign that this layer here, which is 01, which will be our engraving layer later, and we'll leave the outline as 00, which will be our cutting layer. So next I'm going to group those, and that's our first component made. I think what I'll do, just to get this so we don't waste too much balsa, I'll bring that down. Okay, so the next thing I want to look at then is the actual vertical stabilizer, or the tail fin. And if you look at the rear wing or the tailplane, you can see that there's two formers or two ribs either side with a slot down the middle there, and that's for the stabilizer to slot into. Now we're going to have a rudder built into this, so instead of having these components that make up the tail, what I'm going to do is make the tail shape in, or make the fin shape in one piece, bring it out to the side, and then we'll decide what we do with our rudder and how that's going to work. So if we start here, and what we'll do is I'll draw a line, and we'll make this a different colour so we can see it properly, or see it better, and I'll start just here, and we'll come up to the top, and then we'll just put several points around that curve, and we'll use nodes in a little while to make those into smooth curves. So then the fin comes along here. Now what it does have is it sits over this spar in the wing, so I'm going to just cut that shape out. Now this is the top spar in the wing. Now what I'm going to do is I will cut that top spar in so that our tail or our fin can slot down over it. And then we come along and then all the way back up to where we join on there. Okay, so that's our shape. Now if we look, we're at the bottom of our thickly drawn line here, and we're at the top of it here. So in order to get that angle right, what I'm going to do is go to nodes and then just bring that to the bottom, just like that, so that we know now that our angle is absolutely spot on. So we'll just bring these nodes here to the outside as well, to make sure that we're absolutely right with our dimensions. Okay, so that looks fine. So if we just bring that over to one side, and then what we'll do is we will go to nodes to start, just to smooth this all off, and all of these will become smooth curved nodes just by clicking on them and pressing S. Okay, there we go. And then when we come off nodes, you can see that we've now got a better shape around that top there. Okay, so coming back to this, what we want is this needs to be a 1/8 square, which it clearly isn't. It's not quite right. So if we go to 3.2 millimeters width on this shape here, and then again 3.2 millimeters height, we've now got a 1/8 square. So if I'll just change the colour of that. So if I bring this up, and what I want to do is I want to orientate the bottom corners with the bottom on the shape of our fin. Okay, now if we go back to nodes and we click on our outline, we can then bring that up, and we know then that when we come to assemble this, that will be exactly the right size. So come off nodes, and if I grab that shape and just bring it across, so I'll just create another shape now, and it's going to be slightly longer, but the width is going to be 3.2, or slightly higher. The width is going to be 3.2 millimeters, and I'm going to use that now as our shape to make this slot here. So again, select nodes, and what I'm going to do with this is now that that's exactly the right shape, or the right shape for a 1/8 piece of balsa, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take both of these on the left hand side. I've selected both of those nodes. If I press Control and Shift, I can move those over 1/10 of a millimeter. And then if I do exactly the same with these ones and press Control and Shift and then right, and then the right key, then what I've done is I've expanded this, the width of this, by 2/10 of a millimeter. And the reason I've done that is because we're going to hope to slide this down over a spar. And what I don't want to do is, I don't want, if there's any slight misalignment or angle on the balsa, I don't want to cause damage to the wing. So we'll fill that space with adhesive when we come to do the assembly. So that's why I've done that. Okay. So I'll just move that out the way. Now for the rudder, all I'm going to do is I'll just turn this to our cut-in layer. All I'm going to do is make a rectangle, and I'm going to bring that rectangle over. I'm just going to place it on there, just like that. And bear in mind that the tail plane is going to come here, and that will be the top spar of it there. So the tail plane will sit there. So all I'm going to do is copy both of those, Control C, and then if I just Control V, and then all I'm going to do is use our snipping tool over here, snip that away, and then snip that away, and then using our snipping tool still, snip that away, and then snip that away. And what I've got now is I've got two perfectly matched pieces. So our rudder shape is more or less complete. Now what I'm going to do is go to nodes, and then I'm just going to come in a little bit here. I'm going to select both of those nodes, and then I'm going to go up just by pressing Control and then the arrow key. That's taking me up 1 millimeter. I'm going to go up 2 millimeters to give me a good clearance, so that we don't snag when we're in flight. Okay, so I think all we need to do is, if we produce a nice shape here, and I think if we just use our lines, and then what we could do then is put a small radius on, I think. If we just have, I don't know, a 5 millimeter radius. If we Control copy and then Control V down here, what we can do is we can bring this up. Try to keep the same angle as we've got at the top. Okay, so I'll save those components. Bring them over to our workplace. I think what we'll need to do is we'll need to shape this somehow so that we're not wider than 100 millimeters, because the width of our balsa sheets is 100 millimeters, and if we are any wider than that, then obviously we'll be cutting from two pieces. So so then there'd be a split down the middle, obviously. So what I'm going to do is just draw a line from here across to there, and we'll have that as a separate component. just like that. Okay, so once again what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and then come across, and then using our snipping tool I'm going to snip those out, and then we've now got our components. Okay, so that's the tail completed. Okay, so with the tail fin completed and also this skid at the back, all we've got left to do, when you look at the whole fuselage, it's made up of 1/8 balsa strips. So all we've got left to do really is this bit around the window and then the nose formers here. But what I'm also going to do is I'm going to make these two formers here as squares out of 1/8 balsa as well. So so let's do these around the window to start, and I'm going to use the line again. I'm going to make that red so that we can see what we're doing, and all I'm going to do is exactly what we've done before, which is trace around the outside, and all I'm going to do is on that curved bit I'm going to just put a few points and then if we go to nodes, what I can do is just snap these together. And I think I'll go to the outside of that line. Maybe remove that node. Bring that one to the center. And then all I'm going to do then is hover over this, click on that node, press S for smooth curve. Over that one, press S, and we'll get a smooth curve there as well. Now you can see that we're not tracing the line very well just there, so all we need to do is just alter the angle of these two tabs that come out of the side of a smooth curve node. Okay. So then if we do exactly the same to the other one, or to the other piece, I'm going to go from that corner all the way up to there, and then I'm going to put a little piece there so that the two will join nicely. And then again, just a few points around the shape. And now if we get right over that end of that line, they should join together automatically. They should snap together, and you can see that one almost. There you go, and that snaps them together. So just to finish this off now, we'll go to nodes, stay on nodes, and we will click over that, make it a smooth curve node, and again with this one, and then again with this one. And then what we find is when we come out of there, we've got our two components made. It really is as quick and simple as that. Okay, so let's drag those over to the workplace. There's one, and There's the other. So what were they called again? They are F2 and F3. So if I turn that into a cutting layer by clicking on it and then selecting this layer down here, 0, 0, and then we can label these up as F2 and F3. I'll just reduce the size of those letters. From up here it's 25mm, obviously far too big, so I'll make those 3mm because they are very small components. So we'll have F2 and F3. When I come off those, I can now change those to the engraving layer, which is this 01, and what that'll do is that'll mean that it'll just be written on there and it won't cut all the way through. So if I group those now so that those components stay together, and we need one for each side, or a pair of those for each side, so I'll just copy those and then there we go. So I can now put those down into our workspace and I'll arrange those later so that they're nice and neat, and I'll show you what that looks like later. So the last thing we need to do on the fuselage is these formers around the front of the nose, or the top of the front of the nose. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to just create a rectangle, and we will use our measuring tool to measure how high the very first former is here. So I'll go from the top there, straight line down, and the height of that is 16.91, so 17 millimeters, because I've just got the width of the line there as well. So 17 millimeters high, and it is going to be from side to side, it will be 65.5 millimeters, so 17 by 65.5. So we come back to our rectangle and we've got 65.5, 65.5, so we just enter these figures in the width there and then in the height, which was 17 millimeters. Okay, and then the next thing I'm going to do, just to get our shape correct, or our shape, is I'm going to convert that to a path, convert to path, and then I'm going to go to nodes, and in the center of this I'm going to put a node. Just like that. Then what I'm going to do is delete that corner node by highlighting it and pressing D, then delete that corner node by highlighting it and pressing D, and then I'm going to turn this node into a smooth curve node by hovering over, clicking on it, pressing S, and then using these little tags I'm going to get this so that it makes a nice smooth shape. And then what I'm going to do, just so that we can check this, is I'm going to copy, create another one by Control V, and then spin that on its axis just like that, and then bring both together just to check. and you can see we're just a fraction out. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this side to match, because I know that this dotted line is a copy of this side here, the solid line. So all I'm going to do is bring this dotted line out to match this side, and then we know that our shape will be perfectly uniform. And I'm just going to do that like this. There you go. That's how simple it is to do. So I can now bring that away, delete the original, and there we've got our basic shape of our former. Right, what I'm going to do now is, there's going to be a whole number of different ways we could have made this former, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to check against the plan, just to show how straightforward it was and how accurate we've actually got it. So if you have a look, I've brought it over, I've changed the colour so that we can see it. Now you can see that the dotted line is now sitting on the line of the top longer on, and you can see that it comes up to the top of where that former would be. So we've got the height absolutely spot on. And then if we just drop it down here, we can flip it round, and then if I bring that to there, you can see, although we're not fully square there, let's just get it a little bit closer. You can see that for width-wise, that is absolutely spot on. So we know that we've got our sizes absolutely right there. Now if I bring it over, there is another thing we can do as well. I'll just change that back to the cutting layer. Now remember how we get this level. We go on nodes, we hover over one of the sides while we're on nodes, while we're in nodes, and we press A, and we now know that that is absolutely flat and level. So if we come back off there, the one last check we can do is press Control C, then Control V, so we've got a copy. Then we'll flip this copy by clicking there, and then when we lift this and put it over that, you can see that what we did, the little exercise we did before, has made a perfect mirror shape. So it was so quick and easy to do it that way, but I'll be happy to see comments in the bottom for the way that you prefer to do it. So I'll just delete that one. Now the next thing we need to do is we're going to put notches in this former so that we can put these stringers in. Now these ones are 1/16 balsa or 1.6mm balsa. Rather than have a large number of 1/16, in order to give us a little bit of extra strength, what I'm going to do is increase these in size to 3.2mm or 1/8, and instead of having 7 of these, I'm going to put 5 in. So I'll just have the central one and then 2 either side, and that will make the nose a little bit stronger because we are converting to electric radio control. So the way to position these is, if we create a shape there which is 3.2mm wide, so we've created our rectangle, and then we come up here and we go 3.2, and then we'll do the same for the height, 3.2, and what we've got now is a little square that can fit on the top here, and we'll be able to use that to make the correct size of slot in our former. So I'll just bring that down, I'll put it there. Now if we select both of those and then press this icon here, that will center the notch, so we know that that is now bang in the center of the shape. So all I'm going to do with that is I'm going to, first of all, I'll copy the shape, save me making a new one every time for each of our shapes. But if I, or for each of our notches, but if I click on that, now I'm not going to move that shape, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag it a little bit so that it goes over the edge, so we know that the lines cross each other, because then if I use the snipping tool I can just snip that and then snip that centre bit, and then what we've got now is a notch which is exactly in the centre. Now all I'm going to do is I'm going to use my measuring tool now, and I'm going to space these equally on the circumference. I'll just place them roughly at the moment, and when I'm happy that they're in the right place, I'll do exactly the same again. Okay, so I've got those positioned where I want them, and then all I'm going to do now is I've overlapped them by a tiny amount so that I'll be able to use the snipping tool. If they don't overlap, you see, the snipping tool doesn't work properly. So I just snip that out, snip that, and then snip that, and now I've got the one side of that former exactly how I want it. Now I'm going to Control C to copy and then Control V to paste. I'm going to flip that using this mirror tool up here, and all I'm going to do is overlay that onto there, and that shows me exactly where I want my notches on this side to be. So this time I'm going to use nodes, and I'm going to just hover over that point there and press I, which will insert a node. Hover onto this point here, press I, which will insert a node, and then go straight to the middle, press I, and then that node can come down here, and then another just there. Now these, as you can see, have copied what the others are, and they've become smooth curve nodes. So you can see that if I move one of these tags, it moves both sides of the curve. So what I need to do is hover over that and press the letter C. That has now converted that into a corner node, and you can see that that node there is a little square node, whereas this one here is a round node. So that's how you can tell it's a corner node. Now what you find is that I can align that with this line, and I can turn that and align it with that line. So then if I come to this node here and make that into a corner node by pressing C, I can then take hold of this tab and bring that in line like that. Do the same on this side, press C, convert that to a corner node, and then make sure it's in the corner, and then hover over this one, press C, and bring that one down. And then by doing that, I've now followed the shape, and I can be quite certain that this side is going to be identical to that side, so we've got uniformity. So I'll do just the same over on this one. Press I, press C, press I, and press C. So I've already made these into corner nodes. Press I in the middle there and C, and then all I need to do is line these up. Put another one there, press I, press C, okay, and that is our shape formed. So we can delete this one, and I now know that that is going to be just the right shape for me to put 5 stringers of 1/8, so heavier than the ones we've got there, which are 1/16. So the last thing for me to do is this former will sit on top of the two. Will sit on top of these 2 longerons here. And so what I want to do is I want to give a little bit of a key, or a little bit of a shape to sit inside those longerons. So all I'll do is I'll make a rectangle, and that rectangle wants to be 3.2 millimeters deep or high, so 3.2. And now the width of this former is 65.5. Now I want to come in 3.2 millimeters either side, so I want to come in 6.4 millimeters. So if I make the width 58.9, all I need to do now is, if I just expand that in slightly and then use our welding tool down here, we've now got that perfect shape. So with this former completed, we can now repeat that process for S4, S3, S2 and S1, or alternatively what we can do is, and this is what I would prefer to do, make a copy of that former there, so then we'd label that up as S5, and then assign that the engraving layer, which is layer 1 down here. We can group that because that is now complete. I can move that down to the workspace. Now with this one here, what we can do is we can bring it up to S4, and we can sit these edges right on the top of our longeron here. So I'll use Control and Shift and just move that down 1/10 of a millimeter at a time until I'm happy that it's on. And then what we can do is just grabbing this top square, we can just bring the size down like that. Now that's shrunk the height of it. Now what it will also do is, because it shrinks all over uniformly, it's going to do 2 things. It's going to slightly change the shape of our notches and change the size of the notches, but also it's now made us a little bit short of our 3.2 millimeters edge that's going to sit on the longerons. So what I'll do with that is, if I just shift the whole thing up a little, and then we can go to nodes, and I can select these 2 bottom nodes just by highlighting them both like that, and then if I Control and Shift, I can then bring them down until they're at the bottom of the line there. Okay, so that's dealt with those. Now if I then flip this round, and then just to get it upright, go to nodes, hover over this line here and press A, and now it's perfectly upright. I can now bring that down to the corresponding point below, and if I get this part of the edge here right on the edge of the longeron, and I'll do that by pressing Control and Shift, and then the up arrow just to bring me up level, and then the left arrow to
bring me across to where it needs to be. Now at the top here I can see that we are just a fraction over because it doesn't curve in very much at this point. But what I'll do is I'll just grab that and I will bring those down until we're just inside there on the longer run. Now if we look, we can see that this side here is now just shifted in a little. So what we would need to do is go to nodes, these two nodes here, and just bring them up. Oh, that's a 1/10 of a millimetre. Each click is a 1/10 of a millimetre. So we've hardly moved that at all. And if we come down, we can pick these two, or this node, and we can come down 1/10 of a millimetre, and now we know that we are the correct width again. Okay, so all that remains now is for us to just correct those notches. So what I would do is, first of all, we'll go to nodes, I'll hover over that, press A, get us level, and then if I make a square and we make that 3.2 by 3.2, okay, and then we can copy that, because what we might as well do, if we're going to do it this way, we'll set the angle of each of these notches, or these squares, we'll set the angle, and then we'll keep them at that angle so that when we produce our next shape it'll be easier to align. Because what you'll find now, because of the way we've done this, our notches in our new former are just a little bit smaller, and they're also not square anymore. If you look at this, because we've pulled the shape, we're no longer square. So what we need to do is we need to just rectify that. It is much quicker than doing it the other way. So all we need to do is put each of those squares in exactly the right place, go to nodes, and we can reshape the notches for our stringers on each of our subsequent formers. And that's how we're going to complete S4, S3, S2 and S1. And I'll show you what they look like when I go through that process. So I've completed the formers now for the nose, following exactly that same procedure, and the last thing for me to do now with the fuselage is to make these formers here, former 1 and former 2, which sit over the or which support the wing and form the main shape of the cabin right below the wings. So I'll just show you how I do those. Very straightforward. All I'm going to do is start with a rectangle, and all I'm going to do with that is bring it across, and I'm going to make it the same size as this front former here. So make it the same height. It's going to come right up to the top there, right to the top of that corner there. So I've got it this close, so all I'm going to do now is press Control Shift and then use my direction arrows to move it across, and then I want it right on the top of the line, and you can see that's exactly in the right place now. So if I come down below and I just raise this up until I'm in exactly the same spot here on the bottom of the longer run. So if I'll make it slightly narrower just to make it a bit more more usable, more user friendly. And then all I'm going to do is bring it down and rotate it round, and then using the same method as shown earlier, if I convert that to nodes, even though it won't show nodes because it's not converted to a pathway yet, if I hover over this line here, it will, and press A, it will level it up. So that is now level. So all I'm going to do is convert it back to an ordinary shape, and then I'm going to bring that down until this corner here is right on the edge of the longer run again. So I'll just press Control and Shift, and then using the down arrow I bring that edge down until it just touches or lines up with that top edge there. As you can see, that's now spot on. So the bottom, all I'm going to do is shrink this down until the bottom edge is again level right there. So now we know that that former is exactly the right height and exactly the right width for former 1. So if I just bring it now, I'll bring it down here to start with, because there's something that we have to do with it. I'll rotate it round, and then I'll make sure that we're exactly level by going to nodes, hovering over there or hovering over that edge, pressing A, and now we're level. So what I want is the center of this to be right in the center of this dihedral shape here, because that's the shape the wing is going to be, and I want it to sit right on our formers. So you can see that our dot there is on the middle, but what I can do just to fine tune that is press Control and Shift, and we can move a 1/10 of a millimeter, and you can see that we're now right on the center. So all I want to do now is, using Control and Shift again, I want to lower these corners here until they're just below or just touching the bottom of that dihedral. So Control Shift and down we go. And we are now just on the bottom of that line, and you can see on this side we're just on the bottom of the line as well, which is further confirmation that we are right in the center here. Then what I'm going to do is convert this to a path by right click, and then come down to convert to a path, and we'll do that. And then what I'm going to do is go to nodes, and now you'll see there's a node on all 4 corners, even though we can't see the bottom corner at the moment. So I'm going to go right in the center here, and I'm going to insert a node, and I'm going to bring that down until it is right in the center there. And we can move that round with that node selected. If we press Control and Shift, we can actually move that round. And all I want to do is make sure that we've got that identical dihedral there. Okay. So it's actually quite a steep dihedral, that, quite a sharp one. But that's the original design, so that's what we're working with. Okay, so I'll bring that shape over. Now, in each corner, I want it to fit. The longer one will fit inside, so I want a 1/8 square or a 3.2 millimeter square. So I'll just alter the width and the height of that shape that I've made to 3.2. 3.2, and then again 3.2, just like that. Now all I need to do with that is, if I just control copy, and then I can put one there, put one there, put one there, and I'll bring that one down to here. And all I'm going to do with those is make sure that my top left corner is level with the top left corner here. Now what this means is, because the dihedral is going to come up, it means that when we fit this shape in, we're going to have to just ease the end of the longeron. Just going to have to just change the shape slightly so that it fits there. And then all I have to do with this now is go to I can stretch that out there, and then I can go to my snipping tool and just remove all of the bits that we don't need anymore. Okay, just like that. So we've now got that corner correct. If I come back, I can now do exactly the same with this one. And then just make sure that we just bring our shape out so it's clearly outside of all the boundaries, and then we can go to our snipping tool and just snip those two bits off like that, and we end up with that shape. At the bottom we can do more or less the same, but this time it's going to be a snug fit right in the corner. Same with this one. Okay, and then if we just, without moving the square itself, just drag the edges over so that it makes it simple for our snipping tool. Same again with this one. Just like that and that. And there we've got the outside shape of our former. So all I want to do now is I'm going to take some of the centre out of there. I'll just put that in the centre, and then I will control copy, control paste, and I will put another one right below, just like that. Just to give us a little bit in the centre where we've got a little bit of strength. I might just give us a bit more space there in the middle. There we go. So we've now got a space there where we can put platforms in. On the platforms we can put our battery and our controllers, etc., or receivers. So if I just mark that up, and we'll just make that 4mm, and we'll call that F1. And then group, and that's former F1 made. Former F2 will be very, very similar. It'll be a little bit shorter in height, but I'm going to do it in exactly the same way. And then what I'll do is I'll organise these onto a sheet, and we'll cut those all out of 1/8 balsa wood. So that's more or less it then for the fuselage. So I'm going to stop there for today, and in the next video, what I'm going to do, in the next video on this series, what I'm going to do is create the formers, or the ribs for the wings, and I'll show you how I do that in the next video in this series. But prior to that, what I want to do is, I've been asked about some of the finer detail, the basic detail for how we shape our components. So I'll be doing a short video on lines, nodes, and the trace function, and how we can make perfect components, and I'll be going all the way back to basics, talking through every single step of the way. So so that's what I'll be doing in the next video. but in the next video in this series I'll be making the wings. So I look forward to seeing you all then. I look forward to seeing you all in the next video if you want to see that, and don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you all next time.